Good morning again, everybody. And we are here now streaming school-wise with Nish, obviously, but also with Sam. How are you doing, Sam?
Yeah, good morning, Michael. Good morning, Nish. I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
All good from my end, yeah, Nish, you?
Yeah, really good, really good.
Good. How are you finding how are your students finding the whole lockdown thing at the moment, Sam?
Yeah, they've managed to respond to some of the challenges that we've set them. We're giving them a lot of interactive stuff to do, and especially with my background of physical PE as well as maths, where I'm trying to combine the two and get students to send in their videos and pictures of them doing activities. This morning, one was the kick-up activities. They had to count how many kick-ups they could do with their right foot, multiply it by how many kick-ups they could do with their left foot, and then divide it by how many kick-ups they could do with both feet.
Nice. And isn't it, if you multiply anything by 0, it's always 1, isn't that how it works?
Yeah, exactly. That was my attempt anyway.
Yeah, nice. And what's our focus for today then, Sam?
So today we're going to work through effects of exercise, so the muscular system, the skeletal system, the cardiovascular system, and the respiratory system. So some real in-depth stuff with some tricky words for me to pronounce today.
Yeah, good. Go for it. Do you mind showing your screen with us as well, Sam, so we can switch that on when you're ready?
Yeah, fantastic. That's a good point. I'm just going to present now, and that should be me.
Okay, so that's all good.
Yeah, brilliant. So, Nish, if you can share my screen.
It's me to share the screen today, sir.
Oh, sorry, Michael.
That's all right. Don't worry about it. Nish is just making sure I'm doing the job properly.
I'm sure you are.
And you're ready when you feel you're ready to go, sir. Please feel free.
Perfect, Michael. Yeah. So we've got the PowerPoint as you can see now. So what we're looking at today is the long-term and short-term effects on the 4 functions of the body, as well as muscle fiber types and the skeletal system. Okay, a lot to go through, but we'll crack on. So we're going to start off by talking about muscle fiber types. Now, people generally have 2 types of different muscle fiber types. So we've got the slow twitch type 1 and fast twitch type 2. And we sometimes define that as type 2A, but also type 2B. So you can see on your screen here definitions of the 3 different muscle fiber types. Now, slow twitch muscles help enable long endurance events such as long distance running or marathon running, while fast twitch muscles focus more on sprinting and short, sharp tempo stuff. So obviously the consequences of that would be that for fast twitch muscles, they fatigue quicker, but they are used in powerful bursts, as you can see here. So again, if we just define slow twitch muscle fibers, we'll go through it. It says they're smaller in size, they work aerobically with high fatigue resistance, they have good oxygen supply, and they contract slowly. And then, of course, as you move into the fast twitch fibers, you look at they increase in size, they work anaerobically, and they're paler in colour. Okay, and we've grouped them now for you. So the characteristics on the left-hand side of each twitch. You've got the slow twitch, so the shape and size, which we spoke about already. Then we look at the speed and force of contraction, which is really important. And it starts from low if it's slow twitch, and it moves and gets faster into high for fast twitch fibers. In terms of resistance to fatigue, again, it's very high resistance for slow twitch fibers, hence the way that long distance and endurance performers such as cyclists, runners, swimmers, they have slow twitch fibers, which allows their muscles to work for longer. And then in terms of how the energy is produced, slow twitch fibers, they use oxygen, whereas because fast twitch fibered athletes are anaerobic performers, they use oxygen and sometimes goes into glucose. So that, and at the bottom here, it's got aerobic for slow twitch and anaerobic for fast twitch. So they're the 4 functions of the body. So on the left-hand side, we've got the skeletal system. Then we have the muscular system, which we touched on last week. We've got the cardiovascular system and the respiratory system. And I'm going to just show you a video now of exactly what happens in your body when exercise takes place. So enjoy.
Regular physical activity can lower your risk of heart and circulatory disease by 35%. When you are active, the heat produced by your muscles increases your body temperature, making you feel warmer. Your heart starts to beat faster, pumping more blood to the muscles you are using. Your heart is also a muscle. If you are active regularly, it gets bigger and stronger. Your muscles are working harder, so they need more oxygen. You start to breathe faster, so your blood can pick up more oxygen from your lungs. Your lungs work harder to make this happen. Once your blood has picked up oxygen, it moves to the muscles you are using, giving them the extra oxygen they need. If you are active regularly, more capillaries grow in the muscles you've been working. This is one reason why activity starts to feel easier over time. Getting active is great for people with diabetes.
And on that video, that is a description of how your body works, in particular your cardiovascular system, when exercises are taking place. So we move on now into the 4 functions of the body, and we're looking at the short-term effects and the long-term effects of exercise. So we'll start off by talking about the skeletal and muscular system, which are grouped together in terms of effects. And it says if insufficient oxygen is present, there will be a buildup of lactic acid in the working muscles. So there's just a little snippet of a short-term effect. Of course, lactic acid is when the body is low on oxygen, so it needs to convert something called glucose into energy. Now, lactic acid buildup can result in muscle pain, cramps, and muscular fatigue. And anyone that's experienced that can appreciate that it can be very painful. However, if we look on the next screen, you'll get the full list of short-term effects. So we're talking about working muscles produce heat. We've got increased muscles fatigue, the buildup, as we spoke about, of lactic acid, and blood is also redistributed to working muscles. So the long-term, so that's short-term effects, both positive and negative. And the long-term effects, of course, increases both strength in tendons and ligaments, as well as increasing strength in muscles. And we call that hypertrophy. So that's just the increase in size of the muscles. We've also got the increased blood supply around the muscles, increased bone density, and the increased numbers of mitochondria, which is the increase in the rate of energy production. Looking at the cardiovascular system here, so now we've got the resting heart rate average for, it says normal heart rate, so whether you're someone that's, just going about your business without very little exercise, I guess, compared to the elite endurance athletes' resting heart rate. So 60 to 80 beats per minute, or 28 to 40 beats per minute for an elite endurance athlete. So again, it's because of the strength and muscle around your heart. And here you've got the left ventricle. You can see the muscles grown around the left ventricle for the strong heart. We talk here about cardiac hypertrophy, which is where the heart increases in its size and blood volume. And we'll talk about blood volume shortly. And the wall of the left ventricle thickens to increase the strength potential of its contractions. Okay, so skipped. There we go. So if we look at the short-term effects of on the cardiovascular system, so we talk about the increase in heart rate, the increase in stroke volume, and we'll touch on stroke volume shortly, and the increase in cardiac output. The long-term effects, we've spoke already about how the heart gets bigger and stronger, and just be mindful of that word hypertrophy, which will come up, I'm sure, in your GCSEs. I've seen it on many past papers, which increases the stroke volume, lowers your resting heart rate, performs a more efficient heart rate recovery, as well as healthy veins and arteries, and increased capillarization. Now, capillarization, of course, is the amount of capillaries you have in a muscle, and they increase over time the more exercise you do on that muscle. And of course, the more capillaries you have, allows more oxygen and blood to that muscle to make it more effective when working out. But in terms of stroke volume is the amount of blood that can be pumped by the heart per beat. Of course, this means that the heart can now pump more blood per minute. So stroke volume is very important. Increased blood flow allows for faster and more efficient delivery. And we look to deliver oxygen as well as nutrients as well to the muscles. In the cardio output is just the heart rate and stroke volume multiplied together. This obviously increases during exercise, so therefore the cardiac output would increase. The respiratory system. So, as it says here, exercise can lead to a greater need for oxygen in the body and removal of carbon dioxide. Now, your breathing rate can increase, it says, up to 50 breaths extra per minute. And if we look at the respiratory system, the short-term effect is pretty straightforward. Exercise causes an increase in breathing rate and depth of breathing. And the first thing speaks about the alveoli, so it's more efficient gaseous exchanges. So the alveoli is the end point of the respiratory system. I haven't got any pictures, but I'm put some pictures up on Thursday to go into more detail about the alveoli. But it's the end point of the respiratory system, and it's the exchange of both oxygen and carbon dioxide within the bloodstream. So be conscious and understand that word. Increased vital capacity. So that's the amount of air that can be expelled from the lungs. Better capillary network in the body, and increase in lung volume, and increased number of alveoli, and the increased strength of the diaphragm and intercostal muscles, which leads to an increased tidal volume. And again, if we look at tidal volume, as it says there, it's the amount of air breathed in one breath. So you would expect someone like a swimmer, for example, to have extremely high tidal volume, so they can hold their breath for longer underwater. And then the final one we're going to look at is the five functions of the skeletal system. So we're talking here, you can see on the left-hand side, the protection of vital organs, the muscle attachment, joints for movement, the platelets and reproduction, and the storage of calcium and phosphorus. So storage, production, movement, muscle attachment, and protection. They're the key words that we need to look at when we're talking about the functions of the skeletal system. And we've defined them here into categories. So we talked about, in terms of the protection of vital organs, how does the function support the sport in terms of the performance? So we've used an example of the cranium. Of course, the cranium protects the brain, and in terms of the relevance to the sport, it says the cranium protects his head and the ribs protect the heart and lungs. So there's just an example of, in your GCSEs, they might give you a question and it asks about name one of the functions of the skeleton and relate it to a sports performer or an athlete. Okay, so again, if we just go through protection, muscle attachment, movement, and that's relating to the joints, production of red and white blood cells, but production is the word, and storage, so storage calcium and phosphorus. And if we move on to phosphorus, just a quick definition of phosphorus, which is what the body needs to build and repair bones and teeth. Excuse me. It helps nerves functions, and phosphorus also makes muscles contract. So it's an important part of the skeletal system. So if we move on to our next slide, which now we're going to spend 5 minutes or so just really going through the important bones. There's 19 bones that we're going to work through today, and in as much detail as possible to get them memorized into your for your GCSEs. Now, all 19, you will at some point need to label them. I'm sure there'll come a time where in the GCSEs they might ask just for one example of one bone of the body, but obviously we want to go through all 19 because we don't know which one's going to appear. So the first one we look at is the cranium, which is at the top, and then you've got the vertebral column, which or the vertebrae, which runs right down your spine, which is made up of many different pieces of vertebrae. Then you've got the ribs, and the sternum on the left-hand side. The shoulder blade, the back of the shoulder blade, which is your scapula. We talk about the funny bone, the humerus funny bone, which runs from your elbow all the way up to your shoulder. And that's that, where your biceps and triceps attached to. Your clavicle, which is your collarbone. And then you've got the bits where people can get a little bit confused with. It's the carpals and the tarsals as the opposite. Carpals is your hand and tarsals are your toes, if you will, teeth for toes. And the carpals are the bit, in fact, you can see much clearer here on this picture. Carpals are the bit that attach your wrist, and that's leads on to the metacarpals, which are the first few bones. If you look at your hand, you can see, if you straighten your hand, you can see the bones that are attached towards your fingers. So that would be your metacarpals. And then your phalanges, which make up the tips of your fingers and your fingertips. So phalanges, metacarpals, and metatarsals. Sorry, phalanges, metacarpals, and carpals. And then the humerus, the radius, and the ulna. And again, if you were to lay your hand flat on the table and rested your arm on the table, the top one would be your radius. So the one that you'd feel would be most pronounced, if you will, would be your radius, and the one underneath would be your ulna. If we move on to the hips, so you've got the pelvis, of course, and then the femur, which the muscles attached would be your quadriceps and your hamstrings. That's the main bone running from the top half of your legs. And then we look at the patella, which is the kneecap, and then you've got the tibia and fibula. And again, people get confused between which is the tib and the fib, tibia and fibula. Tibia is the main one. If you were to stand up straight, the one at the front of your leg is your tibia, and the one at the back is your fibula. The fibula is less or much smaller than the tibia. And then finally, we spoke about already the carpals. Now we look at the tarsals, and remember, T for toes. You've got the tarsal bones, which is a common, in fact, all three injuries, tarsals, metatarsals, phalanges, very common in sports such as football. They get broken a lot. Your phalanges are the tips of your toes. Your metatarsals are the first parts that join your ankle and your toes together. And then your tarsals is effectively the bones around your ankle. And then the final challenge I'm going to do is complete all 19 bones. If you look at the skeleton, I've labelled them 1 to 19. And what I want to do now is, if I can share my screen, where are we? Excuse me. If I can share my visualizer, we've got all 19, and I'm just going to quickly label them for you. Just zoom into it. Perfect. So at number 1, we start at the top. Of course, we've got the cranium. Again, as I always say, apologies about my terrible handwriting. Number 2, we've got the vertebrae. Number 3, we've got the ribs. And number 4, we have the clavicle. Number 5, we have the sternum. And number 6, we have the scapula. Number 7, we have the pelvis. Number 8, we have the humerus. And number 9, we have the radius. Number 10, we have the ulna. 11, we have the carpals. Number 12, we have the metacarpals. So remember the difference between metacarpals and carpals. At 13, we have the phalanges, and remember the phalanges appear in both the hands and toes, fingertips and toes. 14, we have the femur. 15, we have the patella. 16, we have the fibula. Apologies, no we don't. 16, we have the tibia. 17, we have the fibula. 18, we have the metatarsals. And 19, we have the tarsals. And on that note, that's enough writing for me today. Nish, if you can share my screen, please.
Can
sorry, if you can share my screen, please.
Yeah, of course I can.
Yeah, perfect. So we've gone through the skeletal system. We've gone through the functions of the bone. So remember, we're talking about storage, protection, movement as well. And it's really important that we remember all the different functions of the skeletal system, the muscular system, the respiratory system, and the cardiovascular system, and the effects that exercise has on all of them. But I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial, and I'll see you again shortly.
Thank you so much. I don't know what it was, but I saw the picture of the skeleton and instantly sat up straight.
Yeah, it can be spooky. I think there's skeleton pictures, but yeah, there's 19 bones to remember there, so
yeah, not bad. Also, the average age of the death of a Vietnam soldier, person in Vietnam. But yeah, anyway, Sam, what's the plan today, mate?
I've got to take my son to get his jabs done, so he's not going to enjoy that. Yeah, he's got his jabs for when he goes to primary school.
Oh, really?
So I'm going to have to probably sweeten him up with a chocolate bar afterwards. But other than that, I don't know. Probably a bit of exercise if I get time.
Well, you've now got unlimited time for your exercise, Sam, as you know. So do with that what you will.
Yeah. Any advice? Any good tips? Because I'm just running at the moment and I can't stand it. I get bored so quickly.
Skipping's good. So I skip because I can't bother to run. But every time I skip 50 more times. Doesn't matter how long it takes me. I'm just going to do that. Is the number I'm doing.
Okay, so 50 skips.
Well, I increase it by 50 each time. So I've now been doing it for probably about 4 weeks. Started on so I'm over 1,000 now. I think I'm on 1,100 or something. I can't remember.
Impressive. I never thought about that. Okay, I'll give it a go today.
All right, thank you.
Did you do the crossover and all that?
Yeah, the double jump, all that sort of thing. Yeah, I do. But I end up whipping myself quite hard on my back when I don't do it properly.
Yeah, I'm sure. Oh, I'll leave it with you. Have a good one. If I manage to do it, I'll record it and send it in.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Sam. Appreciate it.
Cheers, guys. Cheers, Nish. See you later.
Thank you.
And Nish, I'll leave it up to you to explain to everybody what they should be doing now to follow up from Sam's work.
All right, cool. There is a worksheet that Sam has put together. He always has great worksheets that he puts together. I will put this link on Facebook and on YouTube. Please take a look. It's not that long. If you've missed out on any of his videos, you can catch them on Facebook and YouTube as well, and also on the Stream School website.
Amazing.
Up next, we have science.
Thank you. So I'll see you guys in a few minutes' time.
Yep.
Thank you very much.